I am seeking the party's nomination for president, and that's for a couple of very, very specific reasons. I think that we have an unusual opportunity in 2024, but I also believe it has to be handled in a very specific way. The reason 2024 is a little bit different than it has been in the past is, of course, that Americans are sick of the duopoly. That creates an opportunity for us. More specific than that, although our economy looks much, much like 1970s, 1980s, the way Americans feel about public policy and the way Americans feel about Republicans and Democrats and the way Americans feel about our institutions is different. Americans are, I believe correctly, losing the blind faith that we used to have in our democracy. Blind faith in politicians doing the right things by us, blind faith in the agencies that represent the government that is imposing its will on us. Things are changing. And they're changing in a way that wakes up Americans, but part of that is not good news, it's bad news. Our government is going in the wrong direction. Our government is increasingly moving toward authoritarianism. A lot of us have always wondered in the past, could the United States ever get to a place where we grow our own authoritarianism? Just like democracies in the Middle East, democracies in Europe, democracies in Latin America, many of them eventually go toward authoritarianism. We've always said it couldn't happen here. It can happen here, and the way that it works is that some politician convinces you that you don't really have to fear the loss of your civil liberties. What you really have to fear is that other schmuck coming to power. And that's what we have with the Republicans and the Democrats. When I was a kid, the age of most of you youngsters in the room, I can remember when Democrats and Republicans each had specific policy agenda. Today, it's very hard to find a Democrat who is anti-war. It's very hard to find a Republican who is truly fiscally conservative. What's the number one objective of the Republican Party? To keep the Democrats out of power, and vice versa. This is where authoritarianism comes from. And while it does mean that our government is going in the wrong direction, it also means that it's playing into our wheelhouse. We are the philosophical descendants of the people that created our Constitution, that founded our nation for really only one good reason, and that's to protect our individual rights. If we don't stand up for that, if we don't fight hard to get back to the Constitution, and believe me, I understand that many of us in this party wish we would go beyond that, right? But we need to fight our way back at least to the Constitution. If we don't, do you think a Republican will? Do you think that a Democrat will? No. And that's why I believe that 2024 is not just an opportunity for us. This is an obligation. Think of all the people. This is not about me, and it's frankly not about you, as lovely as you all seem to be. It's not about the people in this room. Think of the people that are outside of this room, that are not in the rooms gathered 50 times this year in conventions around the United States. Think of the people in our neighborhoods, in our states, in our families, in our companies, people who we call brothers and sisters for no other damn good reason than they're Americans. Think of the people who are least able to stand up to our government. These are the people that get swept up by the world's most oppressive criminal justice system. These are the people that cannot stand up to the federal government, that cannot stand up to the IRS. Even you and I find it difficult to stand up to the IRS. I've been audited. It's a hellacious experience. We need to change the relationship between us and our government, not for us, but for our fellow Americans. We don't have the luxury of standing by and saying someone else is going to help with this. This is our call of duty. If we miss this opportunity, this is on us. We've missed the opportunity in presidential cycles in the past, and I believe that we did so for very specific reasons. And trust me, I mean this not to sound personal. Jo Jorgensen is a lovely person. A lot of us know her. She's been kind to me. I like her on a personal level. She seems like a libertarian. She's smarter than the average bear. However, there was a campaign run that completely missed the opportunity to cleave hard edges against the Republicans and the Democrats when it came not just to COVID policy, but to everything else. Gary Johnson, nice guy, Libertarian guy. He does better for what reason? Because the media and donors were willing to give him some assigned credibility because of his background in public policy and public service. That's terrific. But if you're running a campaign that says, I'm fiscally conservative like a Republican and socially liberal like a Democrat, you're actually not running a campaign. That is gobbledygook that defines us in terms of the other parties. By the way, it's not even true. He was lying to those people. We are not fiscally conservative the way Republicans are. They are not fiscally conservative. Would a Republican tell you that taking people's money forcibly and using it to project military power around the world is evil? No. That's for us to say because it is true. And many, many American people are ready to hear that. Would a Democrat give you an anti-war message? Would a Democrat stand up for your individual liberties? Let's be serious. Would a Democrat stand up for your Second Amendment rights? Would a Democrat stand up for your First Amendment rights? I recognize these are ridiculous or rhetorical questions because, no, we keep giving them opportunities year in and year out, and they don't do that. Our job is not to find common ground with Republican and Democratic politicians. Our job is to draw a bright line distinction against them, but to find common ground with Republican and Democratic voters. And they're out there. Most Americans have libertarian leanings. We need to give them an opportunity to join us. We're not beating them into it. We're allowing them to recognize. But if we're not out there giving a hard-edged message, we're giving them nothing to recognize. We have to stand out from the crowd. Having said that, some of you already know that I'm running this platform that we call the Golden New Deal. What's important about it is not its cute name, and not even, to be honest, most of the words that are in it. What's important is that it has nothing to do with what you'll hear from a Republican or a Democrat. We need to brand our party in a way that helps our down-ballot candidates, that helps Americans recognize us as being something different, gives them a chance to remember us. This is what it has to all be about. My background is in public policy and public service. I was an economist for more than 2 decades. I worked for government agencies. I had my own business, lobbying the federal government and state governments for free market policies for the financial services industry. I worked for the White House for a couple of years. I've been around the block. I think that for most of us in this room, that's all bullshit. Sometimes I think so too. What's important is that to the media and to the donors, it's not. This matters. We have to run a campaign that's credible from their point of view, even as we're pushing a platform that's going to wake them up. It's something that they haven't seen before. The last dozen years I've spent as a police officer in Broward County. I spend an enormous amount of time talking about criminal justice reform. We can disagree from time to time about details like how to get rid of qualified immunity or how to make police officers held more accountable. But bottom line, the business of criminal justice has to be made more like other industries, where the good ones get paid more, the bad ones get paid less, the worst get fired. We need to change the war on drugs, which is to say get rid of it. The government creates black markets, and black markets are dangerous. I spent a couple of days in Arizona at the border wall, right? Shame on me for not realizing what the problem actually is until I got my ass down there. The problem is the black market that we create. 2,000 people died at that border last year alone. Dozens of thousands more human beings are sent into semi-permanent human trafficking because of the black market that we've created. I thought I had seen it all just because I had performed CPR on so many kids with fentanyl, right? No, The government creates black markets all over the place, and they're dangerous. When you criminalize things that our culture is not ready to give up, that's where black markets come from. And our government has no business telling us, remember, culture is upstream from public policy. Our government has no business trying to impose its will on our culture. It needs to go the other direction. We need a different relationship between us and the government. We need to take control over it. We need to take it back. And this is not merely our opportunity. This is our call of duty. Thanks very much. Thank you. You're all being kind, you're all being patient. Is there anything that anyone wants to talk about real quick that's very strange? Don't ask a normal question. We don't have time for normal questions. Anything
Do you
really
support,
strange? Yes, you don't look that strange, by the way. But
Oh, thank you.
we'll give you a chance.
Do you support going back to a precious metals monetary system or a gold standard?
I absolutely demand that we go to a rules-based system
Okay.
to harden our currency. We need to get rid of the Fed for all three of the functions that the Fed performs. The regulatory function that they suck at, we need to get rid of their discretionary monetary policy, and we need to get rid of their balance sheet because they keep using it to bail out whatever is in their mood, right? I don't know that I would go all the way back to base it on metals per se. I would probably go with Milton Friedman's idea in the 80s of fixing the rate at which money stock grows per annum. We can have a food fight about which rule we pick, but it has to be a hard, fast, rules-based system. And I say that as someone who spent most of my career thinking the Fed was the greatest thing since sliced bread. You know, and I got a lot of respect for the economists that work for the Fed. I've met with the board of governors in the boardroom itself. I've had my research in the banking industry cited by the Federal Reserve Chairman publicly. So, notwithstanding a good relationship and all kinds of respect, it's a 100-year experiment that just turns out to be the case. They cannot live up to the mandate that's been given to them. They just can't. I'm not trying to say they're evil or throw their intentions under the bus, but it cannot be done. It undermines the pricing mechanism and actually, in the long run, contributes to the boom-bust cycle. So we need to go with a hard currency. I would go with that type of a rule. So, thank you. That was a good question, even though you're not a strange-looking guy.